coming
And
up.
so we grew up in a big board house in Bagwalk. At the time, they used to call the board that made that house, they used to call it a bagias board. And so that house used to catch on 4 blocks. Because at one point, I used to attend school over 2 times per week. And because of that, they used to call us Rosie Lego Beast because we were always on the road. My brother and I, and they say, you know what? We need to put you guys in a barrel and roll you away because you serve no purpose on earth. But I'm here to tell you that there's more to life. There's more beyond what you are doing.
Hi everyone. So this week on the Trailblazers, we have a powerful story of nothing to something. And it's the story of Jamar Wright, co-founder of Mind Food International, speaker, UN ambassador, NGO, author, and much more. It's a story of him overcoming a life of poverty to now excelling and thriving, plus him also giving us some key tenets that he used to transform and change his life. You can do it too. Stay tuned.
Thanks to all our current partners and sponsors. If you are interested in sponsoring or partnering with the Trailblazers, send an email to the trailblazers247@gmail.com.
Some of our most prominent producer them in the industry tell Tony that he could not bust a female artist because
Failing is one thing. Failing publicly is a very hard thing. My father always said he was growing a prime minister.
And I said I was holding my mouth, the lies were going, and I sat and I saw women on the TV just lying bluntly, just like that.
Released the all media survey, and when you look at the name Ron Mushek, 0, 0. And then they send back to say that they apologize. The lady up there never put in the number.
Seriously?
In terms of help like house cleaning.
Yeah, my mom was a helper back then and stuff. To be honest, I was just excited, to play for West Indies.
I did it. I made my move into entrepreneurship at 40.
What, last comments would you want to share with
You have your core values, you do the right things, it'll fall in place for you.
Hi Jamar, it is a pleasure to have you joining us on the Trailblazers, joining me on the Trailblazers. How are you?
I'm fine. And how are you, Tamara? It's a pleasure being to talk to you and to be on the Trailblazer. Hopefully we can help transform some mind and push some people in the right direction. But
Definitely. And I love your shirt, by the way. Very colorful.
Yeah, and when I called us a while ago and put her on speaker, she said, "That's a nice shirt to be called."
Yes, it is. And that's, of course, is Jamar's wife. We actually had Natasha Wright on recent time.
Yeah.
So this is actually, as I mentioned in Nat's interview, is a power couple. And so we I couldn't have one and not have the other. So Jamar, of course, he's the co-founder of Mind Food International, which his wife Natasha is the second half. He's also a UN ambassador, NGO, a speaker, and an author, because you both have together written several books as well.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So one of the things I always love with Jamar is our story, and one of the things I'm so happy to have you is the realness of you. Like, you just talk it as it is. And you have just this passion from ever since to really inspire. And I guess seeing it manifest is amazing. So talk to us. Let's go back to the early years, because I've heard you shared it, but my Trailblazers haven't. You grew up in very humble, very poor circumstances.
Yeah. So I grew up in a place called Bagwalk, Magazine Lane. And for those of you who don't know Magazine Lane, for example, if you are overseas, that's in the parish of St. Catherine. And for those in Jamaica who don't really know where Bagwalk is, it is between a place called Kent Village and Linstead. So right in between the middle, right after you come outside of Spanish Town, go through the Bagwalk Gorge. Right after you pass Kent Village, then you enter a small town called Bagwalk. To be honest, I don't know many people live in Bagwalk, but I grew up in a lane that they call Magazine Lane. Now, when I was born to my mother, whose name was Rosemary Beckford, and so my grandmother my mother grew up, my mother, which is my grandmother. And so we grew up in a big board house in Bagwalk. At the time, they used to call the board that made that house, they used to call it a bagasse board. And so that house used to catch on 4 blocks. Those days, the 4 blocks for the column or whatever. And the house is basically sits on top of those 4 blocks. And so we used to have a thing that they call cellar, because we used to have a wooden floor inside of the house. And so the entire structure of the house was made out of board that I think they call bagasse board. Bagasse is actually the cane trash that they put together and make those boards. And so those boards look like a big plyboard, but they were easy to become deplorable. And so that house was built 30 years before I was born. So imagine now there has never been any repair done on that house. And so when I was born into that house. Now 11 of us live inside that big board house. The house used to divide up into 3 rooms. One for my grandmother, for my grandparents, which include my grandmother and grandfather, and 1 room for my mother. And the rest of the room was for my cousins. Now inside of our room, we have 2 big beds. And by the way, those beds used to be on blocks. They used to actually catch up on blocks because we did not have the proper bed frame. And back then, those bed frames were made of sometimes iron because they had the spring. And sometimes the spring in those mattresses, it used to burst, and sometimes it came through the soft part of the bed, and sometimes you will sleep on the bed. And sometimes when you wake up, you have a big cut or a scratch or a scrape in your side. Yeah. Wow. And so you have to be very, very careful how you sleep. And so you have to always remember where the wire is in that bed. And sometimes we used to sleep on the floor with roaches and rats. And at that time, we used to be on what we call food stamp. Now, for those of you who probably don't know food stamp, but food stamp was abolished about when I was in grade 6, and they introduced what they call PARTS program.
But I didn't even, and not to cut you, but I didn't know that, because I'm surprised, because I was like, I didn't know Jamaica had food stamps.
Yeah, we had food stamp. I used to follow my grandmother to the police station to collect the food stamp. And I remember one time there was an incident where they run us out of the police station. I think it was because they did not see my grandmother's name on the list. And so they used to give us this, it looked like money. And so you have to go into the supermarket and to buy something to actually change a food stamp for whatever it is that you want. And so when they stopped food stamp, we went on parts. Now 11 of us live in that big board house. Now the zinc on top of that house was very, very, very deplorable. Now when it's rain, my grandmother called that house a dry weather house. And the reason why she called it a dry weather house is because it is only effective during dry season. Now when it rains, we have to ensure that in our room that we roll up our bed. Because if water touched that bed, the entire house will be stink, and probably take at least 2 weeks for those mattresses to dry, because those mattresses was thick and it have spring in it and all kind of things. And so when it rains, we have to, all of the dishes and the plates and the pot that we have to set it inside of that house so that it could collect all the rainwater. So my grandmother used to call that house a dry weather house. And I remember in 2004 when Hurricane Ivan came, one section of that house, the zinc top was blown up. And so we used to have outside bathroom, we used to have a pit toilet outside. Very, very deplorable. And so we used to have a pit toilet. We used to have a outside kitchen. Now, we used to use wood fire because at that time we did not have a gas stove as yet. I think we received our gas stove in 2004. And so we used to cook outside on the fire, and my grandmother was cooking on the wood fire so long that she developed cataract on her eyes. Wow. And she had to go to Cuba and the free program in 2005 to remove those scatterer from our eye. And so when we were cooking, we used to rub mud on the pot and to put it on the fire. So whenever we finish wash, we could take off some of the blackness that was on the pot because of the wood fire and the smoke. And so we used to have an outside bathroom. Now, when I was going to school, and for those who know Bagwalk, if you ever drive through the Bagwalk guard during like 6 a.m. in the morning, it is very, very frigid. And it has a lot of fog, because if you drive through it, you probably cannot see far because of the fog. So Bagwalk is very, very cold. Now, imagine sometimes we have to get up like 5 a.m. to bed to go to school. No, yeah. Sometimes what we had to do, what we had to do sometimes is to run around the house so that we could get warm enough so that we could go underneath the pipe to bed, because the water was that cold.
Wow.
And so that was our reality. Majority of the time we used to cook chicken back and rice, and whatever we could find, because my mother at that time, she was working at a place called Tullow Estate. Now, in grade 6 I remember the principal for Tullow Primary School, she said, you know what, I need to speak to your mother about how poorly you attend school. Because at one point I used to attend school over 2 times per week. And because of that, they used to call us Rosie Lego Beast, because we were always on the road, my brother and I, and they say, you know what, we need to put you guys in a barrel and roll you away, because you serve no purpose on earth. Because we were always on the football field. We were not at school because the money was not sufficient for us to go to school. And so in grade 6, I asked my mother, I told her that the principal wanted to see her.
Yes.
Because she had a problem with how poorly I was coming to school. And I remember my mother, and I asked my mother, I said, Mommy, why is it that you can't send me to school every single day? It was actually the first time I was actually asking my mother such question, because I remember, because you were out of school so often, it become almost normal. So my mother went into her bag and she took out what you call a pay slip. And on that pay slip, this is the year 2000, this is 22 years ago. Oh my God, that's a long time. This was the year 2000, and my mother went into her into her bag, and she took out what you call a pay slip. And my mother, in the year 2000, my mother was earning less than $2,000. And so she showed me she was earning less than 2,000 Jamaican dollars at the time.
For the week?
Yes, for the week, because my mother get paid weekly.
Wow.
And so what my mother did at Tullow Estate, it was like a plantation. It sounded, but it is what it is. And so they had cane and banana and another crops that they grow on this large land. And so my mother, she used to pour the manure at the root of the cane. And when there was no work for that, my mother used to harvest the banana, and she would take it to where they would wash the banana, and they package the banana, and they would ship it to wherever they are exporting the banana to. And recently, last year, my wife and I, Nas and I, we passed through Tullow Estate, because I wanted to show Nas where my mother was working, and my mother was in the car and she was showing me. And if you know about, she was telling me, oh, sometime when she used to put the manure at the cane, the blade of the cane, because if you know those cane leaf, it is very long and sometimes it's sharp, and
it can cut you.
And sometimes it's itchy, and so that is what my mother was doing at Tullow Estate. So by the time my mother get paid on Thursday, because my mother used to get paid every single Thursday, she could cook for us on Friday, and she would give us money to go to school on Friday. And she cooked Saturday, and barely could cook on Sunday, and then on Monday barely, daily scraping what she could to send my brother and I to school. And so during Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we could not go to school.
Any school.
Yeah. So it was a cycle of poverty for us.
Wow, a cycle of poverty. And she was a single mom, right?
Yeah, at the time, because the thing is that my father lived next door. My father lived next door, and it wasn't until a grade 7 that my father actually stepped in. So it was until I actually passed for high school, because I did GSAT that year, and I don't know if I was successful. They sent me to St. Mary's College. It was one of my school. Nobody was really expecting me, because if somebody was going to school 2 times per week, St. Mary's College is not in St. Mary. It's in Above Rocks, in the rural part of St. Catherine, right at the border of St. Catherine and St. Andrew. So I was placed at St. Mary's College, and now it was even more a more difficult struggle now, because when I was going to primary school, I could have walked to school. I was on shift, so if I was on morning shift, I go to school 7 o'clock and 12 o'clock. You could come home and you could probably keep your finger crossed, as my grandmother says. It's her way of saying luck.
Yes.
We used to depend, live life by luck. If you are lucky enough for something to be at home to eat, and so that was our Latin life. But I mean, my grandmother she was used to speak things into us.
Yes, indeed. That is awesome, Jamar. I mean, just hearing, just even that alone already is like, you know, we could even stop there, because that in and of itself is what you're doing now. But we're going to continue. Fast forwarding then from those earlier years where you shared the extreme poverty that you went through, because I mean, you have poverty, but then you have extreme poverty. So what you went through to then transitioning, because you went to high school despite your you know, the educational situation at home. So how then did you later on move on in terms of, you know, attending university, despite the challenges that you yourself experienced with little to no education at that time as a youngster?
Okay, so at the time I was placed at St. Mary's College, and so at the time, the fare from Bagwalk to go to St. Mary's College was $40. So $40 one way and $40 the other way coming back. So it was $80. My mother was giving me $100, and so if you minus 80 from 100, you know, you leave with $20. And so they had asked my father to step in at the time, and which it wasn't much, but I was continuing to struggle to go to school in terms of finances, but I was going to school the same way. And so, but in grade 9, something happened. I was at the football field. And one of my cousins, he called me and he said to me that, could you come and help me to make some roots? Because at that time, there were so many companies that was coming out with this product line that they call roots, and everybody was into this roots business. And you have Zion roots, you have Baba roots. And he said to me that one of my uncle had a roots company, and it was, you know, in the startup stage. At the time he had employed 10 people. And at the time they boiled this big pot, and he said he wants somebody to help mix the roots. And so I went that evening and I was helping to mix roots, and so he gave me $500. And $500 was a lot of money, and so he gave me $500. By the way, $500 was what could have been my lunch money for the entire week.
Wow.
So I said to him, is it possible if I could come in the evening and you know, whatever work that you could find to give me, I would be really appreciated. And he said, you know, I could ask your uncle. And so he asked, and he said, yeah, you could come in the evening. And so from that from that moment on, I used to leave school at 2:20 at St. Mary's College, out of St. Mary's College. So I didn't used to mark my name in the evening. So I used to mark my name. I used to ensure that I reach school early so my farm teacher could see me, that yes, I'm here. And so I used to leave school at 2:20. That was the last class that I had. And so I did not go back to my farm class. I just head straight home. Yeah. And so I used to start work at 3:30 every evening. And so whatever odd job was there, I used to wash the pot. They have some massive pot. The pot was like 5 feet or about 4 feet. Yeah, the massive pot that boiled roots in. If you ever see those big drums, big tank, three of those pots could fill those drums. And so they used to boil those roots. And so I used to used to go to work and I used to wash the pot. I used to wipe out the factory. I used to put on label on the bottle. I used to look for herb for them, pack up bags, any odd job, any job that was there for me to do.
You moved to Portmore to be with your aunt. So would you feel like it was being around your aunt that helped you to develop the mindset that put you on the right path? Well, not that you were on the wrong path, but to get your mindset to start attracting abundance then into your life?
Yeah, because what my aunt did, my aunt had these, what my aunt did when I came to Portmore, what my aunt did, my aunt had a big library. And she used to have book like Dr. Miles Monroe, T.D. Jakes, Sidney Trim. And so now I inherit all of my aunt's book. All of my aunt's book. And so when I came to Portmore, my aunt used to tell me about a thing called purpose. I don't know what that was. And she said, you have something bigger than just a university degree. And so what my aunt did, because I was very shy, she started to say, you need to speak better, because my accent was poor, my English was poor. She said, you need to speak better. And so my aunt used to take me around other people. I used to sit there. It was awkward. She used to take me to PriceMart, all of those places. And so I begin to expose to all of that. She said, you know what, you need to start to travel. You need your passport. And so she would get the form for us and say, you know what, you need to fill out the form, you need to go up to the passport office, come let us go to Scotia Bank, you need a Scotia account, and all of these things. So my aunt was really refining me. She was taking me to another place. I remember when we moved from Cumberland, because at the time we were living at Cumberland, and they bought a house in Caribbean Estate. For those of you Caribbean Estate, that gated community in Portmore. And so, but before we went to live in Caribbean Estate, they did an addition on the house. They went upstairs on the house. And so one day she took all of the documents for the house, for the addition of the house. And she said, I need you to put all of this in a spreadsheet for me. I will never forget that day. And I said, this is personal. And she said, no. She said, I want you to see the figures, because I want to break something in your life. She said, if I can break it in your mind, I will break it in your life. And so at that time, I saw the entire cost for the addition of the house. And it was mind-boggling. And she said to me, I want, when you're going to buy a house, that it is not impossible for you, that these figures will never be a barrier to you.
Awesome. I love the point, though, that you mentioned where she said that you need to, if you can change it in your mind, you can see the changes in your life. That is such a powerful thing. I mean, because to have somebody like that who is such a visionary, who saw the greatness in you and what you could become, and and are now, before you yourself saw it, because of the fact that you were just looking at what your present realities were like. How crucial is that, though, to have somebody like that in your life?
It's very important. I think that was a very pivotal point in my life, apart from my grandmother and my mother, because I never forgot 2010, she pulled out a book from out of her library, and she said, this is a book by Dr. Miles Monroe. It's called In Chase of Purpose. And she said, I'm going to give you this book. And she said, if you read this book, you will go further than me in life.
In
and at that
pursuit,
time,
in pursuit of purpose.
yeah, by Dr.
Yes,
Miles
by Miles
Monroe.
Monroe. I
And
had
she-
that book too. Yeah.
Yeah, and she gave me that book. At the time I was 22, and she put that book in my hand, and she said, if you read this book, and if you continue to read other book, you will do great things. And she said, you will go further than me in life. She said, the only disadvantage that I had, she said, I did not discover these books early. And she said, all you have to do was to read those books. And I began to read all of those books. I began to read books on marriage, because my aunt have so many marriage books. And I was reading books on marriage. I read all of my aunt book. And then here in 2012, that's when I actually met Nas again, because I know Nas from UTech, but all of those years, 2 years, because my aunt told me that, she said, if you can get it right in terms of reading those books and developing the right philosophy.
I mean, that is impressive. And again, the power of the mind. And I'm a firm believer, as you know, Jamar, in terms of the power of changing your mind through reading, and whether it's online or the physical copy, but or the word then, because it could be reading, it could be listening to it, whatever it is, but getting that kind of positivity in your mindset to change the psyche of your life. So I mean, as you mentioned, in terms of even marriage and then meeting Nas, so when you started Mind Food, because as we mentioned, Jamar and Natasha, they have Mind Food International. We had Natasha a few weeks ago actually, on the TrailBlazers. So you were the one though that initially had that idea, right?
Yeah.
What was the reasoning for that?
You remember that mentorship program that Alvin Day had?
Yes. So Alvin Day, noted author and speaker Alvin.
Yeah. And so I went to that session, and so I was because I was reading all these books from 2010 to 2013, but I never know what to do with all that thing that I was becoming like a reservoir. There was so much inside of me. I was changing. And so I used to post all of these things on Facebook, just writing and posting on Facebook. So I remember I was sitting on the bed with Nas in 2013, I think, and yeah, in 2013. And so I said, babes, I have an idea, right? And so I think Alvin did sent out an email, and when I looked at the email, I saw 123 emails, and something just said to me. A voice just said to me, it wasn't the clearest voice I ever heard. The voice said, send out a message and name it Food for the Mind.
Yes.
And so I said to Nat, I said, babe, instead of posting this on Facebook, I'm going to send out an email to all of these email addresses to people. And she said, no. She said, no. I would not want somebody to bombard my email with all these, motivational stuff. And so I said to her again, I said, babe, I should. And she said, no. And so I went back to her the third time, and she said, babes, I don't think you should do it. And so this is what I did. I went behind her back, and I sent out the message. I sent out the message called Food for the Mind. It was the first message. It was titled, You Are a River and Not a Reservoir. I remember that vividly. And so I received a call from Sandy Eran, and she said, hey,
Sandy.
Yeah. She said, you should continue this thing. She said, whatever you do, never stop. And so this is what happened now. My cousin, I don't know how my cousin was on the email. He received the message. And so my cousin called me, he said, I love this idea. This is a perfect idea. I love it. And he said, you need to change it from Food for the Mind. He said, that's too long. He said, nobody's going to remember. He said, you do marketing, you should know these things. He said, a name that is too long, nobody remember. And I was saying, oh yes, food for everybody love, but I can't believe it's not butter, it's a brand, it's a very long name. And he said, all right, cut it, I'm not going to debate with you. And he said, you need to call it mindful.
Yeah.
And I said, what? He said, yeah, you said you need to call it mindful. And he said, you know what? I'm going to develop a logo for you.
Wow.
And I said, no. I said, I don't need that. And he said, trust me. He said, a couple of years from this, you are going to thank me for it.
Wow.
And so from that day, I used to blind copy people, put it in a message and send it out and call it mindful. And from there on, I start to receive call. I receive call from somebody asking me, somebody saying, Jamar, I need a book. I need a book. And so from that idea came the book. Somebody called me by the name of Mr. Ian Jackson. We are Mr. Ian Jackson, a good friend now. He said, Jamar, if you need a speaker for any of your conferences, I will come free for you because you are empowering me. And I get in contact with Mr. Greniers, you, and so the first conference we had was in 2014 at the PCG Auditorium, and we also published our first book. And from there, it was just to empower people, and people started to invite us to come to
events. And the rest is history.
Yeah, the rest.
It just keeps growing and growing and growing. From TV to the papers to social media, you name it. But just to see how you were able to transform your own life and have a rich, fulfilling life. So it's literally from nothing to something. And that's really literally the story of creation and what God is about. It's creating something powerful from literally nothing that's there. So I mean, I'm honestly so inspired, Jamar. And as we wind down in terms of you know, your message to not only just to young men, but to others who are looking on, because we are all in the pursuit of purpose, as you had rightly mentioned, Miles Monroe earlier. And along the way, to be honest, some of us are laser focused. Sometimes we lose track. Sometimes we get back on track, you name it. But what are the key things you would advise, give advice that we need to do to fulfill our purpose and our destiny? What would you say are those?
One of the key things is that though, if you are not connected to the Creator, you should connect to God. There are many people who fulfill their purpose, but they are not connected to the source. And so they are not in the kingdom, and so they do not have that luxury of that good success. But you want good success. So the first one I would advise you need to connect to the source, who is God. The second thing now is about your purpose. You need to find what you were born to do. And so until you find what you are born to do, you are not going to be fulfilled. I mean, you can do the cosmetics of life. You can have the appearance of success. You can smell like success. You can live like success. But until you find that purpose, then you will never feel a sense of fulfillment. My uncle died in Bagwalk on the same mattress that we grew up in, the same deplorable house. And he asked me, the final two words that he asked me before they find him dead, and that same mattress the following day when I went to Bagwalk, he asked me, was there more to life? Because you see, my uncle have never left Jamaica. He has never even traveled even to Montego Bay. He have never experienced the vastness of life. He have never seen what he has read about. He has never flown over the Caribbean Sea. And so he asked me for a ginger beer. And when I got him to the ginger beer, he asked me, I don't even know if it was a rhetorical question because I did not answer him, but he deep down inside of him, he must have known. And he said, was my nephew, is there more to life? And he was sick at the time, and the following morning he died. Did he got the answer? The answer was more to life. But I'm here to tell you that there's more to life. There's more beyond what you are doing. The second thing apart from purpose is that you need vision. There are two things the Bible said that people perish from. One is lack of knowledge. Where there is no knowledge, my people perish because they lack knowledge. You don't want to be ignorant. And the second one is that you need a vision in your life, not personal ambition. All of us want a personal ambition. All of us should have personal ambition. Probably you want to buy a house. That's fine. That's a personal ambition. Probably you want a dream car, like my wife. She wants a Mercedes Benz. That's fine. That's personal ambition. Probably you want to go back to school. That's fine. That's personal ambition. But you need vision, something that will move humanity forward, something that when you achieve it, it will make humanity better. And guess what, my friend? That is what God found, because where there is no vision, there is no provision. You know, you need core values, things that you are not going to deviate from, and that is very important. That this is one of the things that when people get married, we should ask people, what are your values? Do you value honesty? Do you value faithfulness? Do you value commitment? What keeps you anchored? It's like a skyscraper. A skyscraper must be anchored to bedrock. If a skyscraper is not anchored to bedrock, when an earthquake comes, that skyscraper will tumble over. So you have to anchor to something that will never move. You need to be anchored to solid bedrock core values that will never move, that people will never get out of you. So you must have some core values. And guess what? You must be persistent in life. Yes. You must be persistent in life. I will get there one day. No matter what, I'm going to do this until the day I die. You should live until the day you die. Persevere. And when you take your last breath, you will never ask, was there more to life? Because you have given life every single thing you have. So persevere, work on those dreams, that when God see you, when you die and take the last breath, he will say, well done, my faithful servant.
What a beautiful and fitting note to wrap things up on. Jamar, thank you so much. That was really, really, really nice, and just I'm so proud of you and Natasha, all that you were doing.
I'm proud of you too.
And just keep at it, man. Keep at it, and continue to inspire the millions that you are inspiring all across the world. So that, of course, TrailBlazers was Jamar Wright, speaker, UN Ambassador NGO, and co-founder, of course, of Mind Food International, author, and so much more. I should put minister in it as well, because he just gave us a nice little message there. Could preach at church. So thank you so much, Jamar. Continue to be a blessing. Continue to blaze your trail and continue to just, be a role model. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi everyone, I am Tamara McKayle, television and radio presenter, producer, communication specialist, and of course producer and host of the TrailBlazers series. I'm inviting you, yes, you, to join the family. All you have to do is just click the subscribe button right below. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're alerted as to when we have new episodes. And then join our family for weekly inspiring episodes that will not only lift your spirits, but will give you the tools, the keys, and the strategies that you need so that you can walk in your purpose and blaze your trail. Thanks for watching.